All right. Well, so I have my dad here. Money Matters with LA. And my dad is my hero. There's a lot of background and a lot of people say, who is Leigh-Anne and what drives her and all different kinds of things. And this camera and podcast thing makes me very nervous. And I'm actually wearing stars today because Glenda Baker, I met her last year in New York City, and she was like, just get on the video, just do it. So today my stars are in honor of Glenda Baker. But my dad is just my best friend. And when people say, oh, Roy, that's my dad. Yeah, or, Leigh-Anne, we kind of know a lot of people, and over all the years, I am who I am because of so many principles that I got from you. And I just wanted to kind of introduce you to my world and talk about why I believe what I believe and some of the markers and the moments of that. My dad, Roy, adopted me when I was almost 3.
Almost 4.
Okay, almost 4. So he married my mom after 6 weeks of dating, and they're still married to this day, which is so amazing. And as a kid, I had daddy issues, and I've had abandonment, and I had some daddy issues. And so today we're going to kind of go in a personal direction in my world. I'm too dumb to quit, and I am pretty determined, and as a young child, I was too.
Mm-hmm.
For you to come in with another man in the wings, and so what my dad's always taught me is that I can be anybody I want to be. I can do anything I want to do, but I had to learn the hard way to get there. And now here I am, 47 years old, and I have an amazing career that I love so much, and you have an amazing career that you love so much, and I personally think you're such a big deal. And I love telling people kind of what you do and who you are. And so I want you to talk a little bit about that too, because I am big, and all of my conversations so far have been about relationship. They've been about character and integrity, and that comes from you. You taught me to not burn bridges.
That's right.
So where did you learn, or what made you decide that you weren't going to burn a bridge?
I think it came from years that I spent in sales. You never know what relationship, what connection is going to lead you to another connection. In other words, if you burn a bridge, you don't know how many more bridges you're burning.
Futuristically.
Yeah, futuristically, because there may be somebody that you would burn a bridge with that you could figure out a way to. Everybody's got a network. I think I've always taught you everybody is a center of influence. So everybody has a network of people that they know, and my goal has always been to introduce me to your network, and then I'll introduce you to my network, and let's see how we can help each other. And I think there's a lot of, and I'm sure you talk about this in your podcast, there's a lot of Christian principles there. I think we certainly follow a guy in the Bible that was a pretty good networker, never burned a bridge except with highly religious people, and they didn't have much network that he needed. He wanted to reach the people. So his whole deal was meeting a lady at a well, or meeting a guy in a tree, or somebody who got dropped in through a roof, or something like that would go in and tell people what he did, and then the word spread that way. But before we even had social media or anything else like that. So I think that's the premise of not burning a bridge.
So when I was young, I was learning, where my faith meter was. And I remember sitting down with you. I had been exposed to some other belief systems, and I was a young adult. I had backtrack a little bit. I had just placed a baby for adoption.
Mhm.
A little bit of my story is I was bullheaded and was going to do things my way. And I found myself in a predicament where I was pregnant unexpectedly out of wedlock. Baby's dad did not say that he was his. And about the 7th month of pregnancy, I came to you guys and said, I think God has another plan for my life. And that was to find a family for this young man. God had already decided who that family would be. And you
Mhm.
sat there very calmly and held my hand through the whole thing. And at that time, November 11th, once Emery was born, we all have moments where we come together and they're pivotal moments. And that was a pivotal moment for me because you had decided your life was going to look different, period, end of story, for 15, 20 years down the road when this young man who's a part of our blood comes back. Mom had decided, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes anymore. I
Right.
want to be here whenever this young man comes back because God has ordained this and he's put it together. So then I go flash forward and go into media sales, and you're teaching me some things, and our friend Dawn's teaching, and I learned some new things about the Bible that I had never heard. I'd kind of been sheltered and protected. And I remember one day we were sitting in Luby's in Odessa
Mm.
at the Odessa Mall, and I was telling you, if God is so good, if he's so loving and so caring, how do people die? How do people go to hell? And and it was all about relationship.
Mhm.
You brought it back to a one-on-one relationship. He loves us. He wants us. And you were always really calm at that moment with
Mm.
me and always took me back to the foundation of that truth, no
Mhm.
matter what. So you've always been my person.
Mhm.
When I was 16 years old and you decided to go to church,
Mhm.
that was your moment. That
Mm.
was where you were like, we're serving God.
Yeah.
And that was where relationships came into place for us, I think,
Mhm.
don't you think?
I think so.
The church just became a being for us.
You know, Leigh-Anne, I think a lot of people think church is about going and hearing a message, and they're attached to a pastor or somebody that teaches. As you well know, and as part of my story, I went with some people and helped start a church in the Austin area. I've been blessed to be the personal friend of many pastors, and they all will smile and nod the same thing when I tell people all the time, if it was just for coming on Sunday and hearing the message, I mean, I'd stay home and listen to a T.D. Jakes podcast or listen to Craig Groeschel or somebody like that. My friend, whoever the pastor was that I knew at that time, he's a good man and he has good intentions, but his message, you know, there's in this day and age, particularly with social media, there's a whole lot of really good pastors that you can hear. The difference is when it comes to the relationships with the people in that church, and I think that's why God put us in the church, is because when you had the baby and put it up for adoption, and here was this other couple, and we obviously had been in a very conservative church that maybe might have in a earlier day or another time might have looked down on a single mom having a baby out of wedlock, but we could not have enough people that came around us, loved on you, loved on us, loved on the family that was taking this baby for adoption, and it made all the difference was a relationship. And I think that's exactly. We had years ago. I was telling this story the other day. You know, we would have a pageant. We would have an Easter pageant, and I remember the pastor at that time asked me, "Do you think we should still have the Easter pageant?" And I said, you know, as an outreach, you know, probably not, you know, I mean, and I was the lead in that thing at the time. I said, probably not, but you can't do anything to replace the relationships that I make over 4 to 6 weeks of practicing every Wednesday night and getting to know people and building sets and all of that kind of thing. And that's the difference I think that that the church makes in my life and has made in my life is when relationships make a difference and you're down and you need advice or you need a friend, you got somebody you can call.
Yeah, relationship.
Yeah.
That's what you've taught me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for this foundation that you laid in me. Many people through all the things we've ever been through, they're like, how have you navigated that? How have you made it? And I don't tell a lot of the sad stuff, Yes, I placed Emery for adoption November 11th, 1996, and people think you gave him away. I didn't give him away. God placed him on Veterans Day into a military family that I got to pray for and handpick, and the relationship stayed open. And then flash forward a little bit longer, and you have become sober at this point in time, and you're serving God, serving church, serving our family, and now you've gone to Austin and planted a church. And my brother moves with you guys to be closer, and we have a epileptic background, both of us. And one day he made a decision to take a bath, and he had a seizure in the bathtub, and we lost my brother. And you were the one that was there serving the church. And in Austin, I mean, the church was all around us. In Midland, where I was with my young family, the church was multiple churches were all around us. In great loss, it was such a big, and I went through a real turning point in my young adult life with anxiety and depression, and you were going through your own thing as a parent who just buried his only son. And it was always a point back to relationship and to Jesus. And so when people want to know about me, or they just don't even understand the depth of why I'm tenacious, because I've learned, but I've had such a great role model. I mean, you and Grandmom and Mom, of course. My mom, we're a lot alike, and we don't tell people we're a lot alike, but we're a lot alike. So in the middle of all of that, we've moved how many times?
The last time I counted, I think it was 24, somewhere between 24 and 30 times, and we've only been married, we'll be married 44 years in July.
So we moved, and back in the day, you were in oil. Well, you're kind of in oil too, we'll get to that. But if you worked for Halliburton in Odessa, you lived in Odessa. And if you worked for Schlumberger in Midland, you lived in Midland. So we bounced back and forth. This commuting business was not happening. We lived in Perryton. We lived in Oklahoma City, and a few houses in each of those places. And so you were constantly the man, trying to juggle moving us and the young family. And there's 3 of us kids at this point in time, and building relationships everywhere we went. It was a new space, so we had to find new relationships. So all of that, and every address we ever lived at, which I think is amazing. I can't remember like that. But so then we lose Shannon in Austin, and then Grandmom gets sick, and she has Lou Gehrig's disease, and Mom goes to Clovis, New Mexico, and you're living in Abilene at this point in time. And I started going through some things, and the goodness of God, I just can't help but every time I see the goodness of God, my parents are there with me, right there beside me. So in March of 2013, you guys had moved, and I was starting to go through some marital struggles, and out of nowhere, you're going to move back to Midland and buy an oil company. And within 4 months, my husband took his life, and you guys were here to help me pick up the pieces with my children and step in and play a parental role for me. And in the meantime, some things start brewing in your world.
Mhm.
And I tell people my dad's a big deal.
Mhm.
He's a really big deal, y'all. So my dad's a big deal, and he's I people may think that's so silly, but it's not silly to me because I just I love being able to pick the phone and call.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't know my story. I'm not on this public platform, I'm a mortgage girl. I own Edible Arrangements. I raised Eli the athlete and Trinity the singer. But what I want people to know is a little bit of this side
Mhm.
of who I am and see where I get my wisdom from.
Mhm.
Because when I need wisdom, you're the first one I call.
Well,
And
thank
when
you.
I'm in trouble, you're the first one I call.
Mhm.
So, over the years, what would you say other than just not burning bridges, what would you say was the biggest turning point as our dad and advice?
I think that, again, hearkening back to the faith that I came about in 1994, when your mom and I were going through a very rough point of our marriage. And I always say, it's when it happened for you guys. I mean, so we were married in 1980. In 1994, we'd been married 14 years. I think everybody in their 40s runs into a point where they say, okay, I think for men, it's always that point. Well, I may not, up until now, I always thought I might get the call to come quarterback the Cowboys or, or coach the Longhorns or something like that, no matter who your team is. But at that point, you realize, well, that's not going to happen. And I think men and women handle that transition right at 14 to 15 years of marriage differently. For men, I think I think women always, I think they're smarter in that they always know, well, yeah, this is enough. Raising kids and having a marriage and going on vacation and
I've arrived.
building a family. This is just the middle of the deal, and women are in that and want to be cherished and supported by their husbands and everything like that. I think that men, like I said, it's a kind of a blow to the ego. You
Mhm.
find some men. I never was that guy who act out in affairs. Some men, act out in other ways. They misappropriate money with their business, or they're trying to take this shortcut to prove that they're still the man, that they still got it. And while I wasn't doing anything but drinking too much, that was enough to make your mother say, I've both of my girls have had second marriages, and I've heard them both say, I could do this on my own, and I
Mhm.
think your mother was at that point where I could do this on my own. And so, I think I looked down into that hole, and I didn't want to see another man raising my kids. They were that important to me. I think I started walking back from the edge, and my faith became very important to me. When I went back, I had been to church when I was younger, hadn't been to church in many years, but when I came back in 1994, it was, I'm going to do this. And you get that from me, although
Mhm.
we're not blood, you get that from me. And I think all my kids get that from me. If we're going to do this,
We're going all in.
we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so we started going to church, and people would say, "Hey, we're going to have a potluck on Wednesday night." Yeah, we're there. We're going to volunteer in the kids. Yep, we're there. We need somebody to help with young adults. You bet. Whatever, we're
Mhm.
all in. And the relationships that came out of that made a big difference. It made me know how important that is. But also, as I studied, the Bible more and got more involved with a relationship with God, there came a time when I realized, there's a whole lot of people in the Bible that got a whole lot worse than I do. Could always find somebody in the Word that had it worse than I do. Maybe
Mhm.
you lost your son and you lost all your money, and you open up the book of Job, and that ain't nothing.
Mhm.
You look at somebody that got tortured or something, or their world wasn't going right. Well, we serve a Lord that certainly did everything perfect. He was the perfect Lamb of God, and still, he got crucified. And I say that all the time. And as time went on and I learned more about that, I learned, well, I made a mistake, but it's not fatal. I got a God that forgives me. I got a family that forgives me. As long as I've got those two things, I can make the rest of it work. I can find, $5 to go here, or I can find the money to feed my family, or I can find another job, or I can do something like that. And then God brought in this plethora of, jobs starting about that time that led me to where I am today. But I think those are the things. I think faith in God and the belief that my family was always there for me was the big difference.
I think that is where, for me, when I get anxious, being a single mom or being on my own. I mean, I just do my own thing. When I get in my head, first person I call is you. And you remind me of these foundations. If I'm getting low in my savings account, I don't like my savings account being touched. And you're like, babe, you have a savings account. Aren't you you have a savings? Shut up and listen to yourself. So I just find such a grounding voice whenever I call you when I'm freaked out. This last week, my epilepsy has resurfaced, and I didn't know who to call. I called you, and we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're good. But when I see life going on, and when I think about the life that's happened in our world, I just am so blessed. I'm so blessed to have such a person to look up to. And Mom, she gives me a hard time. I call her Dad. I call Mom. But the thing is that you always bring me back to this biblical advice and this biblical foundation. And it's just another dollar. Go make another one. It's just the yard that has weeds. Take the weeds out of it. It's just, just putting it in such simplistic form for me has been so good. So a few years ago, I, of course, went back into mortgage, and I was in a transition coming out of a marriage, and you had a really cool transition because a relationship happened. And in my mind, I would hear these things, and for example, this heir, you're a court-appointed receiver, and court-appointed receivers, what they do is they step in as a middleman, and the judge or the attorney or the bank will say they're in charge of this estate for right now, and we're going to pay them because you guys keep messing it up. So 5 heirs, and they can't agree on how to split like $18 million a month or something. It was some crazy, and I'm going, I'd settle for $1 million out of that, And so you step in and you spend the next several years managing adults. So I want to talk about some of those, because there's some really cool stories that came out of that. And then, of course, COVID hit, and the ranch sells, and it becomes a big story. So I want to talk about some of the pitfalls of that and the relationships and why relationship would have mattered in that time.
So I can say who it was. It was a entity called the Hanging H Ranch, and was founded by Mr. Roy Lindsay in Pecos, Texas. He had started out being he worked for the county, driving a motor grader, maintainer, dirt equipment. He loved cowboy. He loved cows. And so he would ride the bus from Pecos to Orla in order to go out and work day work on a ranch over the weekends while his young family was at home. And then as he built up some money and relationships with some of the ranchers, they would offer to sell him the ranch. So he would go to the bank, he would borrow the money for this ranch and that ranch. He ended up with a series of ranches that went all the way from the border of New Mexico and Texas in Loving County, all the way to Balmorhea, 92 miles from the top of the ranch to the bottom, 67,000 deeded acres and 138,000 acres that they had on a grazing lease. You know, most people that have grown up around Midland know Pecos, you know, was not a huge oil center. There was some shallow oil production there, but not anything like there is today. But starting at about the late 2008, 2009 through 2010 and after, they started the Delaware Basin development. And I would argue that that's probably some of the richest oil and gas rock in the world. And so they did not have a lot of the minerals. The Lindsay family and the Hanging H Ranch didn't have a lot of the minerals, but they did have surface. And I had I had 11 operators operating on the ranch. So I had been involved in oil and gas going all the way back to my early days with Schlumberger, and had continued to keep track of new developments as things came along, horizontal drilling, you know, fracking, you know, those kind of things. And so at this particular juncture, I was doing a lot of transactions. I was selling a lot of oil and gas. Somebody would come to me with 20 wells, making 100 barrels a day, and I would go broker that deal, find somebody to buy those, and collect a commission for selling, very much like your real estate agents do. But I had been fascinated by water and what was going on with water and the amount of water that it was taking to frack these oil wells, and then the produced water that was coming back that they put into saltwater disposal wells. So I got fascinated with that, and I got a call one day from some attorneys, and they said, "Hey, we've got this family, the Lindsays, and they can't get along. They have one of the family members has been running the ranch without a lot of transparency, without a lot of financial sharing of the profits of the company with his shareholder family, and we have decided we need what's called a rehabilitative receiver." So when people hear receiver, they think of bankruptcy. A receiver can be, in many cases in the court system, what is called in the first part of those rulings a disinterested third party. So
Like a mediator.
Yeah. It didn't make any difference to me, you know, who got what or whatever. I was in there to try to run the company so it wouldn't deteriorate any longer, and to try to find some way to rehabilitate the company. So went in and had a mediation, started distributing the funds right away, started distributing. The company was making several $1 million a month. So there no insolvency. There was plenty of cash in the bank. Started running that, started negotiating right-of-ways and pipelines and surface damages, and selling with the 11 operators that were operating on the ranch, and selling and selling fresh water, and looking at saltwater disposal facilities to dispose of produced water. We did that for a few months. We had a mediation, went through 4 separate proposed transactions. Neither of those went through over 3 years, and then we were finally able to liquidate the ranch for a nine-figure payday.
Yeah.
And so then distributed that to the shareholders. And what you always find interesting is, I mean, during that time, we had 2 brothers had a fight in the courthouse, and one of them signed a letter of intent to sell in an orange jumpsuit. You know, we had a lot of different people that tried to purchase the ranch that for some reason or another couldn't purchase the ranch, but we were able to get a transaction done ultimately and get that case solved. Now, you know, a lot of people say, you know, if I had a 9-figure payday, you know, my life, just like you said, my life would be good. But I have a saying all the time: it's hardly ever about the money. It's always about power.
Mhm.
That can be the same case, whether it's a divorce, whether it's any kind of civil litigation that
Mhm.
I'm involved in. I have 5 cases that I'm working on now outside of that Hanging H Ranch case, and in every one of them, pretty much, it's about the money. Now, about the power. They
Mhm.
may use the money
Mhm.
to try to get the power, but it's always usually about the power. And
Yeah.
again, not to be too redundant, you have to go back to your faith. My
Yes.
attorney tells me all the time, I try to treat those people the way I would want to be treated.
Mhm.
And I think that's the reason why the courts keep on calling me to look after these cases, is because I try to treat people the way I would want to be treated.
And you keep such a level head. I rarely see you get emotional. It's
Mhm.
a very rare thing. It's always just, there's really some stories, I mean, of people showing up at doors with shotguns, and
Mhm.
there's stories of people going to jail, and stories of showing up to court in strange outfits,
Yeah.
but you practice what you preach. You always take it back to how you want to be treated and what the biblical root is. One of the things you said to me a couple years ago, and it changed my world
Mhm.
in mortgage. It was not about the paycheck anymore.
Mhm.
It's not about the money.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think of what the quote was, but you have a quote about money. Do you know what I'm talking
Money
about?
money magnifies character.
Yes.
If you're a greedy person that all you look for is how you can get more money and how you
Mhm.
can cheat people out of their share of your money and you can hold on to more money. If you get a 8-figure paycheck, or something like that, you're gonna do more of that. You're gonna be more greedy, you're gonna be harder to get along with and everything else like that. On the other hand, if you're the kind of person that gives to a charity, gives to your church, takes care of your family, you get more money, you do more of that.
Mhm.
Money multiplies character.
I just love that so much.
Mm,
Money multiplies. Money magnifies character. Character is such a big deal
mm,
in my industry.
mhm,
We're held accountable to our licensing. We're held accountable, and I really am trying so hard to change not just my professional life, but my personal life into being more of an advisor, I'm not just a loan officer. I'm not just my children are moving into their adult life, and money. I don't want money to change the character of who Leanne is.
mhm,
It's great when it's there, and it can be great when it's not there. Does it provide stress? It provides stress. But
mhm,
at the end of the day, what I've realized in the last couple of years in going out and doing it on my own is these core things that I've gotten from you,
mhm,
and now you've started saying this here in the last couple of years. It just has changed my opinion on people. It's changed my opinion on the way I look at things, and I'm just so grateful for it.
mhm,
And so, our family has been through, oh man,
mhm.
we've been with people who have gone to prison, we've been to the cemetery and back, and at the end of the day, we have each other.
Mhm,
And it all goes back to the biblical roots. There's a scripture that is your favorite scripture, which is, I stand at my post and
mm.
people are watching,
Right,
right?
right.
And that's where I kind of started my second half of my adult life, is in that scripture. I'm just going to stand. People are watching me. They're going to watch what I'm doing. They're going to watch what I'm saying. And character has become such a big deal to me. Whereas when I was younger, you always said
Mm,
shortcuts to happiness always end in bad things. And I always took shortcuts to happiness. Now, although I still shoot from my hips,
mm.
I do it a little bit more calculated, and that's because of what you've taught me to do.
Well, and I think that's how sales has changed.
Mhm.
You talked about first going into sales. I mean, I've been selling things pretty much since the day I got out of high school. And there was a time people that were around in the 70s or early 80s, when there was a lot of sales that happened through manipulation. How can I present things in such a way that people will want to buy these things, and then I'll get a big fat commission, and that'll be it. I'll be set for life if I can sell enough things. Something happened with me, and I think it was about the time it started happening for everybody, and it was when you started wanting to go into sales, when with the advent of the internet and people can do their research, people can say, I want a mortgage. They're going to pick up their phone. We've all got these computers at the end of our arms, where you can do a lot of research very quickly. So in that scenario where you have AI or you have the ability of the World Wide Web or anything else to do your research, what makes a difference? Well, what makes a difference is character. Going back to what you said, what makes a difference is, can I trust you? Do I have a friend that has trusted you in the past? Do you have a referral from somebody that it's worked out for them? And I've always had a deal, well, if it works for them, it'll probably work for me. And so those are what I want. I want people to say, okay, it worked out all right for this person. It'll probably work out for me. And so I'm going to give this guy a call and give him a chance. And that's all I wanted. And I think that's what a large portion of your business, I think you've even seen sales change that way.
Oh, yeah. And there's so many times being a female, I see some other things happen. Everybody can get on the bandwagon of who's not cool or who this. One of the things that you also taught me was not to judge somebody based on another person's experience of them. So I might have a very good friend that has problems with this other really good friend. Well, I'm not going to dislike this other person because you dislike them. And I learned that from you. And I've taken that into my professional world too. I try very hard. Some people might say that I'm a politicker. I'm not a politicker. I am a lover of people. I have been given so much grace and so much love that I just want to love people. And someone might have done something really bad and I may not like it, but I just want to love them through it. And I learned how to do that because of you. You've taught me how to do that. You've shown it as an example. You live it out. You have people that have been really bad and mean to you. At the end of the day, they still call you sometimes and they still talk to you when you're at the club having lunch or whatever.
The one thing I would say, Leigh-Anne, is, and I hadn't even thought to bring this up, but we're blessed to live in a place, Midland, Texas, where, people don't come here for our sandy beaches, and they don't come here for for the trees. Although I've had people tell me if you're standing on your knees, there's a whole forest here.
Yeah.
But it's the people that make this place. I always tell young men that come see me and they're wanting to throw in the towel on their business, and I say, listen, if you haven't been broke in Midland, you haven't been here long enough. So, I can take you to person after person who is successful in this town that was facing a minus sign or brackets in front of their bank account and went in and talked to a banker or a neighbor or somebody like that. And all of a sudden, they found a way to make it one more day, to make it one more hour. I think that resiliency that you talk about comes from living in Midland. I don't know where a guy like me can come and make as much money as I've made in my life in a place where people give you a chance. In Midland, people will give you a chance. And I think that makes a big difference. When you're talking about sales, a lot of times when you're wanting somebody to just trust you at your word, Midland's the kind of place that if you back up what you say you're going to do, people will give you a chance.
Yeah, and I talked about that with Chris Beckett and Terry Vestal. If you do what you say you're going to do, have character, have integrity, and those things. And so I think you're so cool. And I call you for everything. And I just want the world to see I am who I am. You're part of that. And I wanted to talk about who you are and where I get some of that, and there be a face on some of that,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else you want to ask me?
I don't know. I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Well, I'd just like to say before we finish that I'm very proud of you. You have been resilient. You've had so many chances you've faced losing your brother, losing your husband. You've downturns in money and everything else, but you just keep on finding one more way to go, one more day. And I'm probably the most proud of your resiliency and how you love. You love big. And I think that's another component you have to be successful and to have people trust you is you have to be able to love people and see them where they are.
Yeah,
So I'm proud of you for
love
that.
God and love people. Thank you. Well, I've had that demonstrated to me by you and Mom, and I just love being able to call you and say, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?" And you're older than me, and I'm out of my comfort zone, but you're willing to go the distance with me anytime it's uncomfortable or anything. You guys stepped in and helped raise my kids. I mean, it's such a cool thing to sit back and watch. When I was growing up, I was my grandmother's favorite, and all of my cousins and my siblings knew that. They whatever. They knew that I was favorite. In our world, my children, Shelly's children, they all say that they're Poppy's favorite or Grandma's favorite, and every one of them believe it. It's not, yeah, I'm a favorite, but Trinity's got the edge, like when I was growing up. Every one of the grandkids, they believe that they're the favorite, and the great-grandkids now. Yeah. It's just such a cool thing to bring it back to the close-knit part of who we are, and you guys stepped in and helped me raise my kids. Still to this day, today, Eli called. He went and worked out with Dr. Whitehead. You set that up. I hope Poppy... Oh, I worked so hard, but it was hard, and I didn't get the whole workout, and now I've got to get supplements, but I feel bad calling Poppy, but he'll be mad at me if I don't call him. And I'm like, he'll be mad at you if you don't call him.
That's right.
And so what you've taught me is, what is the worst? I mean, I went through Dale Carnegie where, accept the worst that it could be and move on. But you really taught me that. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? Accept it and move on.
Yeah.
You're still alive. You still wake up tomorrow with another opportunity to serve God and show people that you can love them. And this is some of the foundation of where I got that. And I just wanted to dive in a little bit on the personal level. Not a lot of people see that side of me very often because I'm busy handling their money and their credit and their referrals or, whatever. But there is a foundation and a core to me that the resiliency comes from a foundation of wisdom that I have never quit looking to. The Bible says, if you ask for wisdom, you will find it dancing in the streets. And I don't have to look very far. You guys have never removed your hands from me, and I'm a daddy's girl through and through, and I'm very proud to say that, especially, after giving you such hell my teenage years.
Yeah.
But, I look for that wisdom, and I never want to be at a place where I don't want to live above reproach, where I can't be reached out. I can't be corrected. I can't tweak things. I want to always have an ear for wisdom. I always want to have an ear for advice, and you just are a cool guy. I mean, anybody that wants to know someone cool, this is your guy. He's a cool guy.
I don't know about that.
So thank you for being on my podcast.
Well, we'll have to do it again.
Okay, you got it.
Okay. All right.